Welcome to Go For Side Effects. I'm your host, Kevin Simon. We all know my lovely, good-looking co-host, John.
Wow.
How you doing today?
I'm doing good.
I
Thank you.
had to say something positive. And everybody,
Yeah,
I want
right.
to, I want to welcome in Army veteran who is retired for 28 years, which I don't know how the hell you did it. This is Paul, everybody. Paul, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Good. Okay, we're going to start off by tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your lovely bio.
Okay, so I served in the United States Army 28 years, and I joined in 1990, August, and I originally wanted to join the Marine Corps, and actually, the place where I joined the Army, they had all four of the Army, Navy, Air Force all together right there in the hallway. I was sitting and talking to the Marine recruiter, and he said, "Well, I can't get you in for a couple months." And I said, "Well, that's not soon enough." And he basically said, "Well, hang on one second. Sorry about that." He said, "Well, I can't get you any sooner." I said, "Okay." And then he left to use the bathroom, and the Army recruiter came and grabbed me and dragged me across the hallway, and that's how I joined the service, joined the Army. So I left for basic training September '90, and we were supposed to graduate in January, but with the looming desert storm getting ready to happen, they went ahead and shoved us through uh, basic and AIT, and we graduated 21st of December. So I was able to go home, spend a couple weeks at home with my family, and then got shipped to Germany. Had orders to go to a place called Heilbronn, 237th Engineers. Got stationed there, and then we were in Baumholder, Germany, actually loading tanks on railhead, and it was really cold. And we had a lieutenant come up and say, "Hey, we need volunteers for Desert Storm." And I looked over and I told my buddy, I said, "I think I'm going to volunteer for this." He's like, "Don't volunteer for nothing." I said, "Whatever." And because I was freezing to death pretty much, and it was cold. It was like 20 below zero. And I said, "Sir, can you say that again?" He goes, "We're asking for volunteers for Desert Storm." I said, "No shit." He's like, "No shit." I went over, I signed the piece of paper. About 2 hours later, we're on the back of a 5-ton heading back to Heilbronn. And uh, with that being said, we left. We got our shots that week, and sorry about that. It was my phone. And we left and went to the desert. We landed in Saudi. When we left Germany, it was like six inches of snow on the ground. We got there, it was like 75 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it was like, wow, what a shock to the body. We landed there, and we flew Hawaiian Airlines, which was kind of funny at the time. And of course, when we landed, the ladies were the stewardess were throwing flowers as we're getting off the plane. I'm like,
What?
what the heck's going on here, right? So we get off the plane and we're sitting on the tarmac, and we sat there, Kevin, for probably, I would say, 13 hours waiting.
Whoa.
And finally, we had a corporal. There was 110 of us, and he was the highest ranking. His name was Corporal Jackson. He went up and talked to this Air Force guy, and he said, "Hey, man, we need some water or something." And he's like, "About another hour, you're getting a bus. We're not giving you any water or nothing. We don't have any water to give you." So we were all dying of thirst. Anyway, so they take us out in the middle of nowhere. And at first, I got assigned to the Big Red One because my MOS, I'm a combat engineer by trade. Uh, like, so me and John, we could commiserate with that being said. Anyway, so I got hooked on the Big Red One initially, and then we were about an hour later. They came out and said, "Hey, the guys that we hooked you to the Big Red One on, nix that. So you're gonna have to hold on a second, but we need volunteers for door gunners for
Oh,
Chinooks and
Jesus.
Blackhawks." And I said, "Man, that sounds pretty badass. 20 years old, fresh out of basic AIT,
Yeah.
the whole nine." And so again, I volunteered. So I volunteered to do that, and I got hooked on to the First Aviation Brigade, or I'm sorry, the 11th Aviation Brigade out of Schwäbisch Hall, Germany. Me and four other buddies of mine, and got hooked onto Chinooks, and we got on a bus, went to another place. They flew us out because we're part of 7th Corps. They flew us way out on the left because we were the left punch, right? So when I got there on the 13th of February. So the storm had already started. So they flew us out there, and we get out there, and then they pick us up, and we get out to the middle of nowhere. And the next day, they go ahead and assign us to what Chinooks we're going to be on. The funny thing was, they're like, "Hey, we got to get you qualified with the 60." And I said, "Well, how does that happen?" And one of the officers said, "Well, we're going to take you for a little ride." So we go for a ride, and we get up in the air, and they do a 90-degree bank turn to the left, and I was on the left. And when they did the left turn, I thought my sphincter was going to fall out of my rear end. So I thought I was completely going to fall out of the chopper. I about lost everything. I just ate and everything. And of course, they were all laughing about that. But anyway, so they said, "Hey, we're going to fly up here. I want you guys lock and load." And there was some empty like vehicles out in the middle of nowhere. "We want you to take the 60 and fire it into that vehicle. If you hit it, you guys have qualified, right?" So I'm like, whatever. I lock it back, and then we do a 90-degree bend and go around it, and I start shooting. And of course, every round's a tracer round on. So it was easy to hit the vehicle. We hit the vehicle. We head back, and so that was the beginning of the story there. I flew a few combat missions during the ground war. We did logistics. We carried Hellfire missiles up to the front line. We did prisoner of war, and I think we crew. We did a CNN crew. We even transported them up to the front line.
Did
Really?
Did you do a 90-degree turn then? Did you take it and do that 90-degree turn then with CNN? Oh, hell, they just fell out.
I don't think so. We probably would have lost a lot of people on that one. But
I can't believe they said we need to qualify you to shoot a 60 you're fresh out of basic and we need to qualify you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Aim that gun there, fire.
Right.
Personally, I thought they'd say just test fire. We test fire, that would be it. But,
and all tracer rounds, the barrel was probably glowing red hot. All tracers, for God's sake.
Right. It was pretty bad, but I only had to discharge it a few times. Like, we would take sniper fire because you could hear those things coming a mile away. And by the time they'd say gunner, 11 o'clock, I would switch my gun to 11 o'clock position. But people don't realize that's the fastest helicopter in Army inventory. It'll go up to 225 miles an hour. It goes pretty fast.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Problem is you can hear them flying, 20 miles back, so so we take a little sniper fire here and there. And let's see, during the war, like I said, we flew a few missions. We did have a chemical alarm go off at our base. And of course they sat there and said that it was nothing. It was faulty.
Yeah.
Which is horse crap, because if you read everything now and you go back, it's 13,000 chemical alarms went off while we were there total, and that's including the ones on the ships where Kevin was. And they said, they all misread. There's no way that 13,000 chemical alarms misread, right? So, and then of course, I was running around with with my gas mask on, but they gave us the atropine, if you guys remember, right?
Oh yeah.
You know what the expiration date on mine was? I'm running around. It expired in April '86, and I'm thinking to myself, you want me to shoot that crap in my veins? No way, that ain't gonna happen.
Hell no.
But anyways, a couple hairy experiences. We were flying at night, and we got a mission. And they had to go to NVGs at the time, the pilots. And with that being said, we had fuel blippets that we had to transfer we had I don't know, some fuel blips we were carrying. We had to take it up to the front line. They needed it, a unit, and we had to
What the
fly
hell?
over oil wells. So
You mean a fuel bladder?
yeah, fuel bladder. The ones that
okay.
they hang off the bottom, and
Yeah.
so we went and connected, and we were flying over top these oil wells, and at the time, and I'm thinking, oh boy, this is an accident waiting to happen,
No
right?
shit.
So anyway, so the sphincter got a little tight there too as well. So
And this is why everybody, Kevin joined the
Right.
United States
but
Navy.
but that was one of the times I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble type of thing. But it was pretty sweet. I mean, to be able to be a part of that, be such a young man at the time, and like I said, bulletproof, and we were flying over when they liberated Kuwait, we were flying over top, and of course they're doing their celebratory fire, and I'm thinking, man, we're flying over top of this, and they're firing up in the air, this isn't good, right? So but after the war was over, we were doing some missions, and actually the 11th Aviation Brigade was going to be called to go up north to help the Kurds. We were supposed to do that, and somehow we got out of that mission, thank goodness. But in the meantime, there was some times where I flew up to Kuwait, and if you guys remember Qamishli, that was the place that got blown up. That's the plume, and if I can remember that date, I was indirectly in contact with the plume that day because I was up in the air flying that day.
Wow.
I think it was March the 11th of 91 is when they blew.
I think there's a whole lot of because I mean the wind blowing. I mean, I don't care whether you're in the air or on the ground, it goes up, and
everywhere.
Everybody. That's one of the things that we got so much shit. I mean, I just posted a picture of the damn PB tablets we took. I was like, my wife got these out, and I was like, holy shit, I can't believe you still have these things. And I was like, yeah, we all kinds of wonderful. Did they, Paul, I'm guessing they make you take those PB tabs?
Yeah, they did. So we'd have stand 2 in the morning, around 3 o'clock in the morning, as you know, no sleep. And of course they'd line us up, and our NCO would say, hey, pop them in your mouth, take a swig out of your canteen.
Really?
And, so I took one, and after that, I had a place where I could put it in my mouth where he couldn't see it. And then when he goes to the next guy, I'd spit it out and cover it up with my foot in the ground, because that morning after I took it, I was spitting up blood a little bit, and I'm like, well, this isn't good, you guys know, I mean, we all know this. That was the most hazardous battlefield ever. In
ever
any
fought.
war ever fought.
Yes.
The one that we were all involved in, right?
And here's the thing about it is, I was talking to a Vietnam guy, and we were sitting there talking, and he was saying, well, our war was long and this and this. I said, but here's the one thing about it. We all fought. It doesn't matter how long.
Right.
We were all there.
Right.
We were all in the battlefield. I was on the battle ocean, but I was smart enough not to join the Army to get in a damn helicopter and fly over. But I think that'd be badass to shoot up stuff in a helicopter, to be honest with you. And so while you're up in there, I got to ask you this before I keep going. Did you wear a harness?
Well, it's like
I'm asking a question. I don't know. How in the hell am I supposed to know this?
Well, actually, it's they call it a sway seat. So it would be connected, and you sat in it. And usually, of course, they give you your vest. Of course, we didn't have anything. And I sat on it because I'm like, I don't want to get anything blown off down here if I get shot. That's what you're thinking at 20 years old, right? You don't want to lose your manhood, right?
Right.
So you sit in a seat with a seatbelt.
Well, no, you just sit in like a sway seat, and then you have your hand on the 60, and then you just use your feet for leverage. And,
hell no. I'm telling you, everybody listening out there right now, I know the job I would never freaking ask do there.
You know what the life expectancy of a door gunner is like? 11 seconds.
It was. So what was funny, I didn't know if you guys were able to call back home, but after the war was over, I called my mother, and she didn't answer. So I called my dad. They're divorced. And so my dad, I talked to my dad. He's like, is everything all right? I'm like, yeah. And if you guys remember correctly, there was a Chinook that was shot down over there, and everybody was killed involved in that. So she knew I was a door gunner on Chinook, and she hadn't heard from me. So she was pretty daggone worried. So I I called back there. It's like 3 a.m. back at the States. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're alive. I'm like, yeah, I'm alive, Mom. And of course, she was asking all the mom questions. Do you have a bed to sleep in? I'm like, no, Mom, I don't have a bed to sleep in. I sleep in, wherever I can sleep, and it was kind of cool, but yeah, it was an experience. And then after Desert Storm, I went back to my unit in Germany. And then that unit got deactivated, and then I went to
really?
Yeah.
So Paul, I'm interrupting here, but okay, so anybody that's listening knows that that's where I was deployed for. I was in Wild Flicking. So you were with the 237th Engineers.
Yes.
And I was with the 249th Engineers. And one of these days, I'm going to have somebody listen who actually served with, because I was only with my unit for 6 months. And I was transferred from the 79th Engineers to 249th, which was a cross post at that time in Karlsruhe, Germany.
Right.
Then we went to Wild Flicking.
Right.
And it's like, how can you not know who you're deployed? I can remember about 3 people, and I've never had any contact with any of them since the war. And It's like always the kind of thing that kind of bothers me, but
well, I sure would like to hear some stories about you, John, while you're over there.
No, you don't.
So I wound up that unit deactivated, and I went with the 9th Engineers out of Schaffelsburg. You know where that is, John, right?
Yeah.
You've heard of the 9th Engineers, the Remagen Bridge, when they attacked the Remagen Bridge in World War II. That's what they were famous for, taking the Remagen Bridge in 1945, I think, the final push into Berlin. And then that unit got deactivated. And then I went out to Fort Riley, Kansas, which is the armpit of the United States Army, as we all know.
Wow.
They say,
I can't just say
it's for
with
cold,
the big red one, and you just threw them under the bus.
That is great. I love it.
So I got attached to the 1st Engineers out there. I was out there until January 93, and then I got out. And then in the meantime, so while I was stationed in Germany, when I left the Gulf War, I felt like I had the flu. And I didn't feel quite right. So when I got back to Germany, I had a knot that came up on my chest. And so I went to see the doc, and the doc says, so what's the problem? I said, I have a knot on my chest, and I haven't taken a dump in like 3 weeks. And he's like, well, that knot up on your chest is probably because of it's probably because you haven't used the bathroom, and I said, well, isn't your stomach down? It wouldn't be up here in your chest. He's like, and I started explaining to him, hey, I feel like I have the flu. I'm not feeling well. Actually, my gums were bleeding, and I went to the dentist, and the dentist said I was fine. I didn't have gingivitis or anything like that, and just having odd symptoms. And he looked at me, and of course I'm a PV2. I have one little stripe, and this guy's a major. He's about 42 years old at the time. And he said, look, I'm tired of you Desert Storm veterans coming back and complaining. He said, I don't know what's going on with you guys. You need to shut up and move on. And he said, son, you need to shut up and move on with your military career. I said, yes, sir. I mean, what am I going to say to him? No,
right. And
whatever, but I was having problems. And so, when I left Germany, I kind of, I was having short-term memory loss. I would have times where I would forget where I was at momentarily. Like I could be down the street from where we were stationed at a bar, and I would forget where I'm at. And it's not because I was drunk, but I would, momentary lapses of forgetfulness and stuff. We go to wild flicking, and we do some maneuvers and stuff. We've been out there 30 days, and one night I had a sergeant. We're driving around and riding around in the those John, what are those things? The anti-personnel. We all drove around them. The 1190.
Bradley?
Yeah, no, not the Bradley. The old Vietnam era ones that we used to ride around in all the time. The tracks.
Oh.
Anyways, but
I don't remember. But you guys, that's how you were in wild flicking. Wild flicking was primarily because I was in construction engineers.
Right.
It was under the umbrella of combat engineers.
Right.
And you guys, so I was actually living in wild flicking. You went there to train, which sucks.
Yeah, which sucks. Yeah, it does suck. But living there even sucks worse. It's like Fort Riley, another army.
I actually liked wild flicking.
Okay.
Well, that's because did you ever make it to the monastery?
No.
You never made it to the monastery?
No.
So that's where they sell beer. That's where that's where the world-class beer.
Whoa, hold on. You go to a monastery to get really good beer?
Yes.
What the hell was that I stationed there?
It was voted #1 beer in the world at a point in its time. Yes. Anybody that was stationed or anything knows anything about wild flicking Germany knows that they have some of the best beer in the world.
Man, most of the beer I drank was called San Miguel, and we call it piss water. It's freaking nasty.
That's funny.
And y'all over here talking about the world's best beer, and I'm like,
at one point,
San Miguel. As I like it drinking, I'm sorry if I piss these Texas. I like drinking freaking Miller Lite or Lone Star. I mean, 10 times worse. That's all I'm saying. That's a nasty beer.
Oh, that's
but
funny.
Shit, that Mojo was good. Hell, you drink a couple glasses of that and you're gone. Hey, it tasted like orange Kool-Aid, man. It was good.
Oh, that's funny.
Hell yeah. Okay, we got to get back on talking. I'm over here thinking about Kool-Aid. All right, so you spent 28 years in.
Yeah.
So whenever you get out, you're starting to have issues.
I was starting to have issues. So I'd been out for about 6 months, and the very first issue that I had was I was driving to go see a friend of mine, and my heart started racing so bad that I had to pull off, and actually they wound up taking me to the emergency room. And when they got me in the emergency room, which was 20 minutes later, my heart rate was at 180 beats per minute.
Whoa.
So anyway, come to find out that when I drank caffeine, my heart would do that. Now, let me go back to Fort Riley. So I had a bunch of friends at the time that were Desert Storm veterans that were getting out on a lot of issues with their heart, like tachycardia that people wouldn't get until they were in their 70s or 80s. These guys were getting them in their mid-20s, and the Army was kicking them out, not helping them at all. They were just booting them out the door. They were medically discharging them. And these guys were like, hey, we want to know why our hearts are, speeding up or, things like that. I had a buddy of mine that was in my room with me, and his name was Kidwell, his last name. I can't think of his first name, but he was from Columbus. And we became pretty good friends because we're pretty, I'm from Cincinnati. But anyways, they wound up getting him out on a heart condition, and at the age of 24, which I thought was odd, But in any case, so fast forward, so it was like in June of '93 that happened to me, and I haven't had any caffeine since. I found out that if I drank caffeine, it did that to me, which I found was odd because before I could drink caffeine all day long and be fine. And then I had some other odd things happen to me, like the first 2 years that I got back, I had diarrhea. I could never have a hard stool. It went like that for 2 years. I also had bleeding of the gums, the nose at times, and I would have chest pain, but it would be chest pain that wouldn't be cardiac related. They do EKGs and they'd say, hey, you're fine. they took my cholesterol, everything that they did. I was perfect, because I was only, at the time I was 23 years old. So,
I had the same issues, exact same issues,
okay.
except for the bleeding of the gums.
Yes,
But the bleeding, the chest pains that rushed me,
yes,
everything was fine.
right,
So that's
right,
crazy. I'm loving hearing this.
right. So I wound up doing inactive time from 94 to 98. And then in 98, I said, well, you know what? I want to go to college. And at the time, the National Guard, High Army National Guard, was paying 60% tuition. I thought, well, that's a pretty good deal, because I wanted to go and be a history teacher. At the time, I was a painter in the painters union, which was, okay. I did I wound up doing a 7-year apprenticeship and becoming a journeyman, and wound up being a painter for 22 years in the painters union. And now I have my own painting business. I've been doing that for 7, but I've been in business for 7 years. So, but in any case, it was funny. The symptoms kind of subsided, but I will tell you guys this. I had a couple things happen to me where, like my left side went completely numb one time. Like if you were to cut yourself in half, the left side went numb, and I was like 28 at the time. I thought that was odd.
A little bit.
And then I had one time I felt like I had a seizure, like a grandma seizure, but I didn't. Like I was kind of in and out, you know what I mean? Kind of, it was just a really weird feeling. And so those things went away, and I started feeling actually a little bit better about 5 or 6 years out from the war itself. I mean, I started feeling more healthy, I guess. And
was there anything so Paul, was there anything that you could associate when you were feeling better? Because a lot of times they, doctors, because they're not familiar with our war,
yeah,
they'll, if you're carrying some weight, oh, it's because of your weight, or it's because of that. They always seem to have some.
well, I will tell you this, guys. Let me go back a little bit. So in '93, when I had that episode where my heart, Kevin, I went to the VA and they put me on this medicine that would slow it down, and they wouldn't tell me why they were doing it. And at the time, I went to the VA down Cincinnati, and it was terrible. It was like a freaking concrete bunker down there, and nobody cared. At that time, if you guys remember, the VA funding in the '90s was absolutely horrific. And I told them my complaints, and they're like, "We can't help you," and that's that. And so I quit going after that, and I took the pills that I had, and I just threw them in the trash. They made me feel weird, and I didn't like it. You know what I mean? And so I didn't go back, and I'll tell you when I went back later on. So I felt good enough. I went to the National Guard in '98, and I went into a unit called the 1193rd Bridge Panel Unit, which we built the Bailey Bridge. We were one of the 3 units in the United States that built the Bailey Bridge, which is an obsolete bridge now, as you guys know. But we were one of the units that did that, and so we would have fun ATs like the best paid Army vacation ever was we went to San Diego and helped build a bridge along the border. But we would only work from like 8 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They'd cut us loose, and we'd go drink, go hit the ball. We had an absolute blast. I mean, it was absolute fun. And then we had a 4-day pass in between our 2 weeks, and we went up to LA and went to the Viper Club and all that. And it was quite an experience going up Hollywood.
Best memories of your life right there.
But the further you travel down, it was I'll have to tell you that off air, because it's not meant for. But anyway, so then 9/11 happened right after that, because we went there in June of 2001. Well, 9/11 happened and changed everything. The National Guard went to almost like active duty. In 2002, we had an order, December, saying that get your bags ready, and then of course the war hit that was it February of 2003. So the unit that I was with, we were supposed to come from Turkey. If you guys remember correctly, we were supposed to do a pincer movement on Iraq at that time. Um, and our unit was going to be coming from the north. And then, of course, they were going to have, they wanted to do that. Well, Turkey didn't allow that, obviously, as you guys remember. They said, no, we're not letting any American units in here, which is absolutely ridiculous. But so
Right.
we wound up staying at Camp Atteberry for like 3.5 months up there. And I'm like, we ain't ever going to go over. And by that time, it was May. And, at first, when the war's going on, you want to get over there and do your job. You know what I mean? You don't want to get there and wait around and whatnot. So we wound up going over, and we wound up going to a place called Camp Virginia. I was the only guy. I was the only guy with a combat patch, John. That was it. Out of the 130 of us that went over. And so when we flew into Kuwait, we landed, and I thought to myself, I can't believe this. I left this place 13 years ago, and now I'm fucking back,
Right. No, yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, and of course they come on the air and they go, it's 93 degrees at 7:00 in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be unbearable, So we land and we get off the plane. And I'm like, now what the heck? They had a chow line. They had a big tent with chow waiting on us and stuff. I'm like, well, this is a lot different from the first time around. They had places where you could use the bathroom. They had actual,
Wow.
And I'm like, well, this is a lot different. And I told my sergeant, I'm like, hey, this is a lot different from the first time. He's like, what do you mean? I said, first time I came off here, I sat on the damn tarmac for 12 hours in the heat, no water, no food.
Right.
We went in there and we ate and whatnot. And then they sent us to a place called Camp Virginia. While we were in Camp Virginia, they want us to acclimate to the weather and stuff. Now, so obviously Saddam didn't blow any of the bridges. We're a bridge unit. So when we got sent over, my personal opinion is like, what are we going to do? Here we are. We got these old 5 dump trucks that we're going to be riding around in. The one that I was in charge of was from 1956.
Damn.
Oh, you must be driving a deuce and a half, or
dirty deuce.
No. What's funny is, John, is they said, "Oh, look, this is your original truck."
Yeah, okay, probably fair enough.
So it's like, wow, I'm driving a vehicle here that was Korean War era, But anyway, so come to find out, our company commander got us together and said, hey, they made a mistake sending us over here. We're going back home. Not unless you guys want to volunteer and do anything that, and whatnot. And at the time, I'm not going to mention his name, but he wanted to go up into Baghdad to see what kind of job that we could do. And when we left, he's like, people are dying up there. People are dying. And he was shaking, putting rounds in his pistol. And I looked over him. I'm like, sir, it's called a war, sir. That's I'm like, yeah, people are dying right now. It's called a war, sir. And so he flew up there. They came back. He said, hey, they don't have a job for us. We're going home. And I'm like, great. So I sat there for 4.5 weeks and we didn't do nothing, and wound up going back home. So it wasn't much of a deployment. So we get back. I get on with my regular life, going back to painting and whatnot. And then my brother was, who was in the National Guard at the time, he was with the 2nd of the 107th Cav. And there was rumors going around that they were going to come get people like myself, buck sergeants. They needed them over in the desert. And this was 2004. And I'm like, man, I don't want to go back there a third time. And my brother's like, hey, man, we're doing a peacekeeping mission in the Balkans, a place called Kosovo. And I'm like, well, so I did a little research and got on there, and there is a place called Camp Bondsteel. Then they had another place called Camp Monteith, but we would be on Bondsteel, all the combat engineers that they were taking. They were going to take 40 combat engineers. And so I went and met with this lieutenant, and he said, hey, look, we're looking for E5s to be personal security for high-ranking officers. I said, okay. And he said, would you like to volunteer for it? I said, sure, not a problem. So I wound up volunteering and going with the 2nd of the 107th Cav out of here, out of the Ohio Army National Guard. And we went over and did that mission we left in May, went to Camp Atteberry, trained, and then got on Title 10 orders, and which is active duty, and went to Germany. We were actually in Hornsfeld that time.
Hornsfeld's a shithole.
Yeah. And then we went downrange down to Kosovo. And so my job was I followed around, which is now the adjutant 2-star general of the state of Ohio. I followed him around. So when he went outside the wire, I went with him. And my job was to protect him. He was the colonel at the time, and he was the main guy there. And so
did you like your times in Germany at all, Paul? Did you get the opportunity to get out and about?
Yeah. When I was stationed there, we had when we got back from the Gulf War, we went. A buddy of mine named John. We went. Me, him, and 2 other guys. We got passes, and we went to the French Riviera. And,
really?
Yeah. So we get down there, and I'm thinking, I heard all about this place, and we get down there, and I had like $4,000 saved up while I was in the Gulf.
Oh,
of course, that was a lot of money for a PV, nothing,
Yeah, right.
Big baller, But so he had his military license, so we drove in we rented a convertible, and so we had a keg in the back, and we had
Jesus
going out to the back. We were drinking the entire time. Us 3, of course, we were like, we were making fun of, you can't touch a beer, And so he drove us, and of course we had our passes, and we went into France and went down French Riviera. We had a hotel lined up, and we had a really good time. I didn't know women could walk around topless and look so good.
Europe is very relaxed compared to
Is it really like that?
We had a good time. I actually had a girlfriend up in Amsterdam, and I would go see her every other weekend. She'd come down to the barracks. If you remember, John, they were doing the quality of life, so she could stay with me in my barracks on the weekends. So she'd come down we would do every other weekend because the pass,
You needed to get permission to have her stay in the barracks?
No, yeah. Well, at the time we didn't, they had changed it, so.
Boy, y'all's life was really rough.
Put it that way. A lot of fun.
Well, now so Paul, when he's making, so those people that have ever been over to Europe, or whether you're stationed there or just been there on vacation, yes, we as Americans are really pretty conservative, because over there you'll watch a commercial, and now he just made a comment about women walking around topless. I mean, on the beach. I mean, when I was in Germany, and you could walk out there. Now, of course, military members weren't allowed because there was no on guard life, or there are no lifeguards, so we're in at our own risk, and we were told we couldn't get there. Blah blah blah. But you get there, and there was a big horseshoe shape, and they start out bathing suits, okay, topless. Oh, now everybody's naked. And as an American, well, so we're not used to that. And keep in mind, there are some beautiful women out there, just like there, I mean, there's some really fit people in the world, but when you're all nude, not everybody necessarily looks good without clothes on.
You're absolutely right about that. But I will say this, it wasn't the type of women that you would meet at Walmart with the spandex so tight, and you're like, no, you shouldn't be wearing that at all. Please put that away, type of thing, right? So, but
you can't say that, because and I said a few minutes ago, I said Hohensfeld was a shithole. Now when I say that, so I'm gonna go. It was a training facility,
right,
that I was at, and at that time, I was only in Hohensfeld. Actually, I think I went down there to get a sergeant major's blessing or something to go to BNOC, and it wasn't pleasant, because my commander said, "Hey, well, Sergeant Smith's been waiting for X amount of time," and the sergeant major says, "Well, I don't give a shit." And I'm like, "Oh, sir, why did you say that?" It's a sergeant major that's got a really bad attitude. And I mean, so I don't know about the town of Hohensfeld. I just know the training facility was well. I mean, if you did what you did, and you got real dirty, and it was you're in the field. Anytime you're in the field, it's not like you're going there. It's rather unpleasant in most cases.
Right. It is. And that you're not going there for a picnic, as me and you both know,
Right. Fair enough. Right.
Please stand by for part 2. Thank y'all for listening.